Welcome to the Deep Dive. We've got a mountain of research and notes about learner privacy and digital learning systems.
Oh, yeah.
And it seems like a lot of it stems from Chapter 8 of some kind of book or paper on learning technologies.
Uh-huh.
We're going to break down the most important stuff from all of it.
Right.
So you can really wrap your head around data privacy and all that in online learning.
Makes sense.
This chapter jumps right into something called the privacy paradox.
Okay.
Have you ever felt that? Like, you want the personalized learning experience,
Sure.
but then you get kind of weirded out when you realize how much data they're collecting about you.
Oh, yeah.
That's the paradox in action.
Yeah.
Trying to balance those tailored recommendations with protecting your privacy.
We all want that just for me experience.
Exactly. And this chapter points out,
Yeah.
not everyone weighs the benefits and risks the same way.
Right.
What feels super intrusive to one person
Yeah.
might be no big deal to someone else.
Of course.
And let's be real.
Uh-huh.
Most of us don't have time to
Right.
deeply analyze every website's privacy policy.
No way.
We tend to rely on these mental shortcuts.
Yeah.
Things like how the website looks or its overall reputation.
Sure.
It's like judging a book by its cover, but for digital platforms.
I get it.
So first impressions really matter.
Huge.
But even with the best design,
Right.
trust is still key.
Absolutely.
I'm more willing to share my data with a platform if I trust them to use it responsibly.
Trust is essential.
Like that saying,
Yeah.
fool me once, shame on you.
Right.
Fool me twice.
Shame on me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's not just about trusting the platform.
Yeah.
It's also about understanding what data they're collecting and how they're actually using it.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about the data itself for a second, because it
Yeah.
feels like with online learning, data is everywhere.
You're telling me this chapter breaks it down.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah.
Every time you log into an online course,
Right.
the system is tracking you.
Yeah.
What videos you watch, quizzes you ace, how long you spend on each page.
So they're collecting info on my learning activity,
Yeah,
my skill development,
Mm.
even the context of my learning environment.
all of that.
So like if I'm doing a course on my phone during my commute, they know that.
They could. And it gets even more interesting.
Oh.
They can even use this data to make inferences about you,
Inferences.
like predicting your chances of succeeding in the course
Along.
based on patterns in your data.
So they're trying to figure me out based on my digital footprint.
In a way, yes.
Okay.
And the chapter quotes this guy, Phil Miller from Blackboard.
I know Blackboard.
He makes a really important point.
Okay.
Without the right guidelines, ethical considerations,
Yeah.
this kind of analysis could create self-fulfilling prophecies.
Wait, how does that work?
Imagine the system predicts a student will struggle.
Based on their activity.
Right.
Okay.
That prediction might change how teachers interact with them,
I see.
maybe even lead to them being put in a lower level track, ultimately impacting their chances of success.
So it's not just the data, it's how it's interpreted and used.
Exactly.
That's pretty thought-provoking.
Yeah.
Where is all this data actually stored?
It could be a few different places.
Okay.
Central servers, individual applications,
Mhm.
even on your own devices.
So each location has different security implications.
This chapter gets into that.
Okay.
It's not just what's collected, but where it goes and who has access.
What I really want to know is who benefits from all this data collection.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
The chapter looks at both the good and potentially bad sides of data sharing.
Okay.
Let's start with the good.
Okay.
They talk about this idea of the quantified self,
Quantified self.
where you, the learner,
Yeah.
have access to all your own data.
My own data.
Your progress, strengths, weaknesses,
Yeah.
presented in a way that helps you understand your learning journey.
So it's like having a personalized dashboard to track my progress.
Exactly.
I like that it puts the learner in control.
Yes, exactly.
But it gets more complicated when we start talking about sharing my data with others.
That's where it gets tricky.
Okay, let's talk about that data sharing.
Sure.
Who else might be looking at my info and why?
The chapter dives into three main areas.
Okay.
Social learning,
Okay.
research,
Yeah.
and organizational decision-making.
Okay, social learning, I get.
Yeah.
Sharing data with other students could be helpful.
Right.
But are there downsides?
Well, imagine working on a project
Yeah.
and your progress is constantly shared with classmates.
Okay.
It could lead to unwanted comparisons,
I could see that.
even pressure to perform,
Uh-huh.
plus potential privacy violations.
Especially with sensitive student data.
Exactly.
So it's not always sunshine and roses
Right.
when it comes to social
Yeah.
learning and sharing data.
No.
And then there's research,
Yeah.
which can be valuable for improving education.
It's huge.
But again,
Uh-huh.
we need to think about informed consent and making sure data is anonymous. To protect student privacy,
Right.
researchers should be able to study trends
Absolutely.
without identifying individual students.
Yeah,
Makes sense.
for sure.
But what about organizational decision-making? How does my data play into that?
This is where it gets tricky.
Okay.
Your data could be used for things like evaluating teachers,
Yeah.
allocating resources,
Oh.
or even deciding on student placement.
And that's where those ethical concerns come back.
Exactly.
We need to be careful about how this data is used
Absolutely.
to avoid negative consequences,
Right.
like unfair treatment or discrimination based on data,
Exactly.
and make sure the systems protect individual rights.
It's all connected.
So it sounds like lots of potential benefits to data collection and sharing in online learning,
Definitely.
but also some serious risks that need to be addressed.
No doubt about it.
That's why it's so important to understand all this and be informed.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, stay tuned, because in the next part of this deep dive, we're going to explore some solutions and strategies to give you, the learner, more control over your data and privacy.
Sounds good.
So we talked about the good and bad of data collection and online learning, but what are some of the actual tools and strategies
Right.
to actually protect our privacy?
Yeah.
Because honestly,
Yeah.
those long privacy policies
Oh, yeah.
that they make us scroll through,
Right.
they're not cutting it.
No, they are not.
The chapter really calls those traditional approaches
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Pages of legal jargon, overly complex privacy settings.
It's a nightmare.
They're not user-friendly at all.
Not at all.
It feels like they're designed to make you give up
Yeah.
and just click accept all.
Totally.
So the chapter digs into some alternative approaches that focus more on putting you, the learner, in control.
That's the goal.
Okay, tell me more.
One idea is something called privacy nudges.
Privacy nudges.
So imagine this.
Okay.
You're setting up your profile on a new learning platform,
Right.
and the system suggests some privacy settings
At least on what?
based on what most users choose.
Oh, so like those recommended settings you see on some website?
Exactly.
Okay.
It's like a little nudge in the right direction.
Without being too pushy.
Right.
Go.
They also talk about making privacy notices more visual,
Oh, interesting.
feel more engaging.
Instead of just walls of text.
Right.
I'm
Or
gonna-
think more like infographics.
Okay.
Or even interactive elements.
That sounds much better to me.
The goal is to make it easy to understand.
Right.
And actually encourage people to think about their choices.
To engage with it.
Yeah.
What about those of us who want even more control over our data?
Yeah.
Like, what are some of the more advanced solutions they talk about?
One of the most exciting is user-tailored privacy.
User-tailored privacy.
Imagine a learning platform that adapts to your specific privacy preferences.
That sounds incredible.
Yeah.
It would be like having a platform that understands my individual needs and concerns. How would that even work?
It starts with the system understanding your privacy profile.
My privacy profile.
Are you someone who wants to control every little detail of what's shared?
Okay.
Or are you more comfortable with some data sharing as long as it benefits your learning?
So figuring out what matters most to each person.
Exactly.
When it comes to privacy.
Right. Once the system understands you,
Yeah.
it can tailor everything.
Like what kinds of things?
From how it asks for data
Okay.
to how it shows you the privacy controls.
It's all about personalization.
That's the key.
So not a one-size-fits-all approach.
No.
It's giving each learner a unique experience
Right.
based on their privacy needs.
Exactly.
They also talk about this learner model portability thing.
Oh, yeah.
What is that?
It's like taking your learning profile with you.
To a new platform.
When you switch platforms or institutions,
Oh, wow.
all your achievements, preferences, data
Okay.
would move with you.
That sounds amazing.
It would make switching so much easier.
What about the security of my data?
Yeah.
How do I know it's protected?
The chapter really stresses the importance
Okay.
of putting those central learning components
The systems that manage the data.
Yeah.
Okay.
under trusted authority.
So they need strong security measures in place
Absolutely.
to prevent unauthorized access or breaches.
All of that.
So it's not just me managing my settings.
Right.
It's also trusting the platform to keep my data safe.
Exactly.
There's also this concept of client-side micro-adaptations.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I follow.
It's a way of processing some of your data
Okay.
locally on your device.
Oh, so not sending everything to a central server.
Right.
Yeah.
It reduces the risk of data leaks.
That makes sense.
It gets you more in control.
But it's not just about keeping data locked away.
No.
The chapter also talks about giving learners ownership
Ownership
of their data.
Oh, okay.
So I should have the right to see what they're collecting about me and how it's being used.
Yes.
And how it's shared.
You got it.
They even suggest that learners should be able to download their data or transfer it to another platform.
It's about having that freedom.
I like that.
It's all about empowering learners.
Yeah.
But the chapter also acknowledges that not everyone might want to manage their data directly.
Right. It can be a lot.
So they suggest this idea of a data steward.
A data steward? What's that?
Think of it like a trusted representative who manages your data sharing decisions.
So following my instructions.
Right.
And preferences.
Exactly.
So if I don't want to deal with all the settings and stuff, I could appoint someone to handle it for me.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's data security and ownership.
Uh-huh.
But what about specific situations where my data is shared?
Okay.
Like in social learning or for research.
Right.
What are the recommendations there?
For social learning, the chapter is very clear.
Okay.
Sharing should never be the default.
Right.
You always control what info is shared.
So no automatic posting of my grades or progress to a social network.
Exactly.
They suggest limiting data sharing to relevant people.
Right.
Like other students working on the same project.
Or those with similar goals.
It's about creating a more intentional learning community.
A more privacy-conscious community.
I like that.
And with research, informed consent is crucial.
So I have to know how my data is used.
Yes.
And I can opt out if I'm not comfortable.
Exactly.
No sneaky data collection.
Right.
They also strongly recommend anonymizing data whenever possible.
So researchers can analyze trends
without identifying individual students.
Right.
Makes sense.
Protects privacy, but still allows for research.
Okay, but what about when my data is used for organizational decision-making?
Yeah.
Like if my school is using it to evaluate teachers or make decisions about resources, how can I be sure my privacy is protected?
That's a great question. The chapter really emphasizes responsible data practices.
Practices that are
transparent, fair, and equitable.
So the organizations need to be accountable.
Absolutely.
And we as learners need to be aware.
And advocate for our privacy.
It feels like there's a lot to think about.
It is a lot.
But these solutions sound promising.
They do.
Are there any other key recommendations?
Yes.
So many innovative solutions for learner privacy.
This chapter really digs into the specifics.
Let's unpack some of those.
Okay.
This is where it gets interesting for anyone learning online.
Yeah, these days that's pretty much everyone.
Right.
For sure.
One thing that stood out was the critique of those traditional privacy notices.
Oh, yeah.
You know those long documents no one reads?
I never read those.
Me neither. I just scroll to the bottom and click agree.
I think we all do.
The chapter suggests finding better ways to communicate this info.
Right, because it is important.
They propose privacy nutrition labels.
Privacy nutrition labels, like on food.
Exactly.
Oh, interesting.
A clear label with the key points.
What kind of key points?
Like what data is collected.
Okay.
How it's used. Who it's shared with.
So you can compare different platforms.
And make informed choices.
Makes sense.
They also talk about using more visuals.
Oh, yeah.
And interactive elements.
Instead of just a wall of text.
Right. Maybe a diagram that shows how data flows through the system.
I like that.
Or a slider to adjust your privacy settings.
Make it more hands-on.
I love that.
Me too.
It makes privacy less intimidating.
More user-friendly.
But even with better notices,
yeah,
we need effective control mechanisms.
The tools to actually manage our settings.
Right. And those tools need to be easy to use.
Intuitive.
No more digging through menus forever.
Ugh, I hate that.
It should be simple.
To see what data is collected, who has access, how to change your preferences.
Exactly.
They suggest using clear visuals, maybe interactive diagrams.
To help learners understand and control their data.
Give them a visual representation.
I like that idea. It makes it more concrete.
Yeah, it's abstract.
And they bring up privacy nudges again.
Oh, right.
Those gentle prompts to help you make good choices.
Little reminders.
So if I'm about to share my location, the system might be like, hold on, are you sure about this?
And remind you of the risks.
Exactly. But they say these nudges should only be used when there's a clear consensus.
About good privacy practices.
And you should always be able to say no.
Override the nudge.
It's about guidance, not manipulation.
Right.
And then there's user-tailored privacy.
That's the big one.
Systems that adapt to each person's preferences.
It's a game changer.
I'm still fascinated by this, but it sounds hard to actually do.
It does take some sophisticated tech.
But the chapter lays out some principles.
Yeah.
Like what?
Well, the system has to learn your privacy profile.
How would it do that?
Maybe ask you some questions.
about my preferences.
Or observe your behavior on the platform.
So if I always pick the most private settings,
the system would notice that.
And tailor things accordingly.
Exactly.
So it's not just giving me settings to change.
Right.
It's the system adapting to me.
To your behavior and preferences.
Moving beyond that one-size-fits-all approach.
Recognizing everyone's different.
I love that vision.
It could make online learning feel so much more secure.
And personalized.
Yeah.
So what's the takeaway for our listener?
Be informed. Understand the privacy policies.
Yeah, don't just blindly click accept all.
Take the time to really look at them.
Look for those privacy nutrition labels.
Explore the settings.
Ask questions if you need to.
Your data is valuable.
You have the right to control it.
It's about being empowered.
Taking ownership of your privacy.
That's the key.
This deep dive has given me a lot to think about.
Me too.
Thanks for breaking it all down.
My pleasure.
The future of learning depends on finding that balance.
Between innovation and privacy.
And the more informed we are,
the better we can advocate for ourselves.
And shape the future of this field.
Exactly.
So to everyone listening,
stay curious,
stay informed,
and stay in control.
Check out the show notes for links to some of the resources we talked about.
Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.